Now, I know there's still a bit of Game Week 4 left to go, but that doesn't stop me making some FPL content because there is already plenty to talk about. So here are players to buy and avoid ahead of Game Week 5. I'm going to start off with a bit of a Brentford theme for the first couple of players that I'm going to talk about. With Dean Henderson being a little bit disappointing and probably the most popular goalkeeper amongst engaged managers, I would say, or at least the most popular 4.5 million goalkeeper anyway. I think Flecken for Brentford, given the fixture run that he's about to embark on, particularly from Game Week 6 onwards, could well be the best 4.5 million goalkeeper for upcoming game weeks in the game. He's leading the league in terms of saves, made 22 saves in 4 starts so far. That's 5.53 saves per 90. So that means every game at the moment he's averaging close to the maximum saves bonus, right? And for me, I've said this in multiple videos that I've made previously, the best goalkeepers in fantasy football tend to be ones that keep like an average amount of clean sheets, say 8 to 10 per season, and then just consistently get good amount of saves. And I think Flecken kind of ticks that box. You know, Brentford are kind of an average defence. They're not one of the worst defences. They're not one of the best defences. Sits somewhere, I guess, towards bottom end of the middle. But it does mean that Flecken, as a result, makes a lot of saves. And I would ask the question, Tottenham, West Ham, Wolves, Man United, Ipswich, Fulham, Bournemouth, Everton, Leicester, how many saves and clean sheets realistically does he get in those upcoming games? And naturally, that obviously results in points. Now, I don't know, most people probably who are looking to wildcard now would have done so in Game Week 4, but potentially you might be looking to do so in Game Week 5 or 6 and could be worth changing your goalkeeper to Flecken, or maybe you just had enough of who's in goal for you currently. I do think value for money wise at 4.5 million, Flecken is, I'd go further than the 4.5 goalkeepers. I'd say value for money wise, he's probably the best goalkeeper in FPL for this little run of fixtures. I think he looks pretty decent. Brentford are going to be like average defensive. They've had some tough fixtures so far. I know they haven't kept a clean sheet yet, but again, that's his points total at the moment is propped up by those saves that he's making. And yeah, I think there's clean sheets and saves to come, and he's a really good option. Now, I did want to talk about Wissa in this video because I've been bigging him up for weeks, saying that I think he's probably better than João Pedro. And well, after 1 minute in the Man City game, I was very happy to be proven right. You know, he got off to a goal and João Pedro wasn't even in the squad. However, that's not really gone to fruition. He got subbed just before half-time with what looked like an injury. Might get a bit of news before Game Week 5. Whether he starts or not, we just don't know. So I can't really big up Wissa as a player to buy right now, but I can still big up Mbeumo. And I think there's a key thing that happened today in the football today that makes Mbeumo an even better option. So first of all, he's Brentford's absolute talisman and best player, particularly now obviously Tony has left. He's on penalties, free kicks and plays 90 minutes. And comparing him against, well, the other best midfielder in my mind at the same price point, Eze, who Crystal Palace had a penalty in their game in Game Week 4 and Mateta was the one that took it. So it certainly looks like Eze is off pens and he's 6.9, Mbeumo's 7.1. You know, they're direct rivals in terms of price point in this game. And given that Eze is no longer on penalties, I think there's a really strong argument that Mbeumo is now a better option. And again, just spoken through Flecken and his fixtures. Obviously, Mbeumo plays for Brentford. They have the same fixtures. And those fixtures that are good for clean sheets and saves for Flecken, they're obviously going to be good for goals and points for Mbeumo as well. And particularly, in fact, I wouldn't even be put off by the Game Week 5 fixture against Tottenham, right? I think Brentford could quite easily score at that game. And then it's the same run. West Ham, Wolves, Man United, Ipswich, Fulham, Bournemouth, Everton, Leicester. Like, there could be goals in all of those, multiple goals even in all of those games for Brentford. And given that he's their talisman, you've got to think that Mbeumo is going to be involved in some of them. And he has put up some pretty decent numbers so far this season, right? 0.63 expected returns per 90 is in and around the high level that he was playing at last season. I think that was a similar sort of number to what Ollie Watkins put up last season. I think Ollie Watkins was around 0.58, 0.59, just to give you an idea. 4 starts, 3 goals. Obviously, that's not come in 3 separate games. He obviously got a brace in there, but yeah, I think he's a great option. And with those fixtures coming up, he looks even better. Now, I mentioned Jared Bowen in a little differential video that I made ahead of Game Week 4, and he obviously got an assist, which is quite exciting. I just think he's a really good, solid FPL option. And in a similar vein to the Brentford players and Mbeumo, he's West Ham's, I'd still call him their talisman. He's not necessarily their penalty, well, he isn't their penalty taker. I don't think that'll still go to Paquetá, but he's still their captain and best player in my mind. He tends to start every game that he's fit for, usually plays 90 minutes, and just season on season, he is a player that notches 10 to 20 Premier League goals. And another thing to bear in mind with Bowen, and it certainly looks this season like he's overperforming his stats, but season on season, he is a player that overperforms his expected goals data because he is just such an elite finisher. So the fact that he scored a goal from only 0.5 XG would not put me off going for him as an option, because you can see there last season, 16 goals from basically 12 XG. He is a player that consistently outperforms those stats. And the upcoming 3 fixtures for West Ham and Bowen in particular, I think are really nice. Chelsea at home, Brentford away, Ipswich at home. I think those are fixtures that Bowen could quite easily score in. And to be honest, I know they're under a new manager now, but West Ham tend to play quite well against the good, sort of possession-based teams, which Chelsea I think are trying to be. I think that could be a game that West Ham hit them on the counter-attack in multiple times, and Bowen gets on the end of some chances. I really do think he's got a good chance in those upcoming games. And he's only, again, I included him in my differentials video last week. He's only 6% owned right now in the game, which, well, I think is a really good ownership to be buying him at. Not very popular in the game. The likes of Eze, proving not to be on penalties anymore, could, if you have enough cash in the bank, could Eze to Bowen or Mbeumo, who I've just spoken about, be a nice move in? I do think Mbeumo's ownership, particularly with those fixtures, is going to be a lot higher than Bowen. I don't think a whole lot of people are going to be buying Bowen ahead of Game Week 5, so it's a chance to be a bit different, be a bit rogue, and go for a bit of a differential. Yeah, he's just such a solid option, and he might not be on penalties, but I think he makes up for that from just how dangerous he is from open play. And yeah, upcoming fixtures great. Underlying numbers not looking so good this season, but again, I think as the fixtures change, that will go up. I think he's a really good option. All right, next up, I know they didn't do so well in Game Week 4, but I can't be put off by one fixture from looking at this Liverpool defence. I think a double up, if you can get there, of Trent and Robertson is still a really good way to go in this game. They kept obviously 3 clean sheets from 4 starts. Both of them unfortunately haven't yet got an attacking return, but the underlying numbers they're putting up, particularly Trent, 0.59 expected returns per 90. I mean, if you go back to Bowen, it's better than what Bowen put up last season, 16 goals, 6 assists. It's better than, well, it's around what Mbeumo's putting up this season. And if you just go back, oh, that's a goalkeeper, so it doesn't count. But you get the gist of it, right? Trent is up there with other sort of midfielders around the same price point for expected returns per 90. And he's a defender. So, he's, according to those underlying numbers at least, gotten unlucky so far not to get the attacking returns. But he's as likely to get that level of attacking returns as the good midfielders I've just spoken about at that price point. And he's kept 3 clean sheets in 4 games. So he is a player that can get returns through 3 different means. I mean, I can't really talk highly enough about Trent. And at 7 million, I still think he's fabulous value. Robertson, again, at 6 is a really good option. I think if you only have 6 million instead of 7, you can go for Robertson and feel quite safe. I think you're kind of getting what you pay for between the 2 players. Trent is more expensive, but he's better from an attacking perspective. And that's reflected in the underlying numbers. Not too sure about the Fantasy Football Hub expected points yet. That might well be updated after the game in Game Week 4 and how the players have performed from an underlying number perspective. But looking at the league and the landscape right now, yes, Game Week 4 in isolation did not look good for Liverpool. But looking at, the season, how it's played out so far, it's looking to me that Liverpool are definitely one of the stronger defences. And I don't know, when you compare defences and good attacking players, like for me, the best 3 defences in the league, Liverpool, Arsenal and Man City, Trent and Robertson are by far the best attacking defenders from those 3 teams, if that makes sense. I would back them to get more attacking returns than any of the defenders from the other teams. So that, in my mind, makes them the best. And yeah, I think 3 fixtures coming up, Bournemouth at home, Wolves and Crystal Palace. That's potentially 3 clean sheets there for Liverpool as well. They could conceivably keep clean sheets in all of those games based on how they've been playing so far this season. I guess the only risk is obviously with the Champions League kicking off again and what rotation we could see. But given how the substitutions played out in the Premier League, Robertson got a bit of an early rest, and I've got a feeling that there could be some rotation midweek in the Champions League. I feel like these guys start in the Premier League next weekend, but again, I guess we need to see how the team lines up in the Champions League and maybe get some news in the press conferences, etc. But if you don't have any of these guys already or only have one, I Really do think the double up of Trent and Robertson in defence is a nice way to go. All right, I wanted to just have a look at Aston Villa. They're playing at the time that I'm writing, well, I'm recording this video, so I could be proven wrong in terms of how they get on in game week 4, but I'm really careful not to look at game weeks in isolation. They've gotten off to a decent start so far this season, I would say, and their fixtures coming up, I think, look really, really good. Wolves, Ipswich, Man United, Fulham and Bournemouth. You know, I think those are 5 games. They might not necessarily be amazing from a defensive perspective, although I do think 3 or 4 of those games they've got a real chance of keeping a clean sheet. But I do think they're really good from a goal scoring perspective. You know, I could see them putting goals past all of these teams. And the projected goals data, according to 11FI, kind of backs that up. So if you were to round up their data, 2.13, 1.8, 1.93, 1.52 and 1.98, obviously you can't score 0.5 of a goal, so you have to round it up. In all of those games, they're projected to score a couple of goals, and I think that's quite a good basis to be picking some of their players from. And basically, I've done this in a couple of previous videos, but I wanted to rank the picks within the team, I guess, as to how much I like them. And for me, I would say great picks from Aston Villa, nice solid picks you can go for. Watkins, obviously, Rodgers, Concert and Martinez. I'd say Luca Dean, Pau Torres, John McGinn on sort of the decent side. The reason I say Luca Dean is because I do think there'll be potential rotation with Martin. Pau Torres, I think, just has a poorer, I would say, injury record than Concert does. And John McGinn is a decent pick. Well, we might get the question answered in the game as it goes ahead. So bearing in mind I'm recording this at the time that Aston Villa are playing. There's still an open question as to who is going to be the Villa penalty taker. I don't think it will be Watkins. I think there's a chance, because he does it for his national team, I think there's a chance that John McGinn could take the Aston Villa penalties. If you remember back to last season, how well Douglas Luiz performed in the game, who was playing, by the way, as a centre defensive midfielder, for a period of time when he was getting penalties, he was one of the best midfielders in the game. So if that kind of time opens up where Villa are getting penalties again and John McGinn's on them, I think he could be a nice option, and also chip in with a few open play goals and assists as well. I'd probably avoid all the other Villa players. Yeah, I probably would, but I still think there are plenty of pickable options. And going back to their stats again, decent clean sheet odds coming up. I don't think, 3 of sort of 5 of those games, I give them reasonable chances. And if you round them up, because again, you can't score half a goal, right? If you round them up, they're projected to score at least 2 goals in each of their next 5 games. Just to round off the video, I thought I'd share the 11FI stats that I picked out for clean sheet odds. Well, I use the draft hound stats for clean sheet odds for Villa, but I thought I'd show the 11FI projected clean sheet odds in goals for each team for the next sort of 5 game weeks, because, I can single out players, but looking at the teams and their projected clean sheet odds and goals, etc., should allow you to do the same. I'm going to pick out select players here, but obviously there are plenty of other players you could be going for. What I've done is rank them by their likelihood to keep clean sheets and projected goals across the next few game weeks, right? And this is their ranking. So Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool are the top 3 teams for clean sheet odds and projected goals by the looks of it. So, you can name some good players from those clubs. And what I just thought would be useful in general, just to flash up those odds. Other players that I quite like the look of from various teams. Tottenham look like they're also expected to score a couple of goals in each of their next 5 games. You've got Solanke looking like he's going to be back fit. He could be a really nice option and a nice differential at 7.5. Chelsea, apart from matchday 6, they're also expected to score 2, maybe 3 goals in some of their upcoming games. Arsenal, once they get the Man City fixture out of the way in Game Week 5, look really good. And Man City as well, once they get the Arsenal fixture out of the way in matchday 5, look really good too. I would also say, I'll talk about this a little bit more as I start to preview the game week in future videos. I know Haaland has just been an absolute robot this season so far, right? But I do think game week 5 is the one time where he probably isn't the best captain. And looking at those projected goals, I think it kind of backs it up. I would suggest, given that Liverpool are, well, nearly twice what Man City are in terms of projected goals for game week 5, I'd subtly suggest that Salah could well be the best captain. But yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit further in the video. I'll do a bit more of a comparison. And then just looking at the defences, I think, unfortunately, they've just been conceding the odd goal here and there, haven't they? And they've been a bit disappointing from that perspective, Man City. But from game week 5 onwards, their clean sheet odds look pretty good. Interestingly, they're 34% to keep a clean sheet against Arsenal. I guess it wouldn't be a massive surprise if that game ended 0-0, something like that. And then beyond game week 5, Arsenal are really good. 57% in matchday 6, 57% in matchday 7, 39 and 33. Those are decent odds. Liverpool as well have decent odds, apart from matchday 9 when the fixtures turn a little bit. And Villa as well, who we've just spoken about. They're slightly different odds to what you're seeing from Draft Hound, but just so you get an idea. So, yeah, some players there who I like the thought of buying, and then the stats and projected goals data that I like to look at for players to buy as well. And also, I guess you can use these stats to think about players to avoid too. So you see some of the teams towards the bottom there. If you're owning defenders maybe from Wolves, Southampton, Ipswich, Bournemouth, Leicester, Newcastle, maybe even Anthony Robinson of Fulham, their time in your team may be up given those odds. And likewise, Wolves, Southampton, Leicester, Ipswich, Forest, Fulham, Everton, Palace, you know, their projected goals coming up are not looking so good. So actually a player that I didn't mention here, but given that he didn't take a penalty in Gameweek 4 and Mateta took it, could Eze be off the menu now? That kind of, the fact that he's not on pens, I know it means sort of 4 or 5 goals a season, I guess. It really puts me off him as an option, particularly considering where Brentford sit. I know there's not a whole lot of difference between them in terms of projected goals, but I think Mbeumo with the penalties is quite a lot better than Eze now. So just one thing to bear in mind. So yeah, some players to buy, and then the odds behind it, and also the odds behind some players to avoid as well. Alright, and that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed that and found it useful. Always try and get a video out on Saturday night, trying to react to the games that have all played out and get an idea of the players to buy and avoid, etc. So I hope you found it useful. If you did, please leave me a like rating. You can let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with any of the opinions or shouts that I've made in this video. Just be polite about it, please. What else is there? If you enjoyed the video and want to see more from me and you're not already, please subscribe to the Golden Goal channel, which should be just there on your screen. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you in my next video.